Okay, the design for the computer desk for the motorhome is complete, and I'm ready to build it and install it. So when I came down to the shop to collect up the materials, I did not have a piece of 3/4 that was big enough. So what I'm going to do instead, drop back and punch here, is I have plenty of 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces of 1/2 inch, glue it together, and laminate it up. So it'll be 1 inch thick. So I'll have to make a few changes. I can do that on the fly. So the first thing is to cut a couple of pieces that I can laminate together. One of the other changes I'm going to do is overall the desk is 36 inches by 14 inches. What I'm going to do is make it an extra 4 inches on the end and an extra 2 inches on both sides. And the reason I'm going to do that, it's going to be very easy for me to cut it down after I'm all done, and I want to make it as big as possible. So just in case I can make it a little bit bigger, I'll set it up this way. I'll be able to fit it in the motorhome and check it out, and then bring it back here and cut it down to exactly what I need, unless of course I can leave it that full size. So instead of 36 inch long pieces, I'll need 2 40 inch long pieces, and instead of 14, since I'm going to add 2 inches on either side, I need to have it 18 inches. So these here are already 18. There's some fall off I had from a job we did, and so they're 18. I'll leave them at that. So I'll cut 2 pieces out of this at 40 inches. I could finish cutting these up individually and then fit them together, but then you know, they wouldn't be exactly the same. So because I'm not using a template with a router, I'm just going to cut them with the skill saw. So I think I'll go ahead and laminate them together first, and then I can make the cuts, and if I'm off a little bit, it'll match up anyway. There's a bit of detailing to do, but the rough cut's done. The only thing I have left to do on this, as far as main cuts, is to do the dado, or the slot that will go here to interconnect it. But what I'll do next is make the bracket, get it all fabricated, and then I can line that up perfectly. So I'll hold on that task until I have the bracket done. Since I've switched to the double 1/2 inch glued together, and the brackets were going to be made of 3/4 and 1/2 inch, and I was going to dado into the 3/4 halfway through, which would leave 3/8 of an inch of support in the middle. I'll go ahead, since I got to laminate anyway, I'll go ahead and make that out of, all that out of 1/2 inch. And so what I'll do is I'll create a base out of 1/2 inch. That'll be the width and length that I want. And then instead of cutting a dado, I'll cut a 1/2 inch wide strip, the same length for top and bottom, to create that dado, which is now going to be the full 1 inch wide. So that's the buildup I'll have. So I've got the base, and then I'll fine tune these to make that dado the right spacing here so that it won't be too tight, but it'll hold it perfectly in place. Then just for a little extra support on the bottom for the cantilever, I'll put a secondary piece. So instead of just bearing on 1/2 inch, it'll be bearing on 1 inch. And then the top piece will be a little bit longer, and that will drop in to the dado on the top, and then it all should slide in. Just using the fall off from the tabletop to make the dado just right. So the last piece I'm putting on is going to hang down into the dado about 1/2 inch. It doesn't really matter how far. I'll measure it when I'm all done. To line these up, all I'm doing is getting the edge flush. I'm going to cut both ends square, so I'm not bothering trying to. They're different lengths, and I'll just cut them all at once. And then when I'm stapling these together, I'm pushing down to, you know, squeeze the glue. The staple wouldn't have enough power to draw it in, so I'm pushing it down, and then using the staple to hold it there. And I'm just checking to make sure that I did hold it down everywhere, make sure I don't have any voids with it going up or down, and it's good and tight. All the laminations are together. So now I'll just square them up on the miter saw. And I'm also not worried about the final length. I'm going to actually shorten it a bit from this, but I'm just going to still square them up. Before I start fine-tuning things, I want to make the dado in the top. The top will slide in this way. So what I want to do is make the dado the right position, the right width, and the right depth. I think because this is going to be a pretty critical dimension, and I'm going to be cleaning these edges up, I think first thing I'll do is clean these up. Not going to take much off because they're pretty smooth, but I want to make sure this dimension is right. So I'll clean these up and then relay that out. One of the easiest ways to clean up edges when you've laminated wood together, you got a glue line, and also to make sure they're perfectly flush, is just to take a router bit with the top bearing and mount it in your router table, and then set it up to run on the very top edge of the material. Show you here, on the very top edge of the material, run it around once, flip it over, and then it'll be on the other edge, and you'll get a nice flush edge that way. It's a lot quicker and more precise than sanding. All right, a good fit. It's tight, but you know, wood wears, and I think I'm okay with a snug fit. So I've got it all set up. This one's going to be a bit tricky. I had to set the fence, which is just a piece of a scrap piece of 3/4 ply. I had to set it pretty much right at the starting of where the cutter head is, which then I don't have any infeed to get it nice and straight. And the reason I had to do that was because the finish of the cut is where I've notched in. So if I had it set back here, this notch would hit the fence before I finished my cut. So what I'm going to have to do is get it started and sort of eyeball. This is where feel comes in here, and I'm just going to have to, I've got this straight edge here that I can watch to make sure I keep it straight, but once I get it going and once it's in there, it'll be nice and straight for the, you know, for the whole cut. There's a chance I could not get the very beginning part just right, so I might have to come at it twice and make it a little wider. But the bulk of it, once it gets onto the fence, will be it'll make it parallel to the blade. So a little tricky, but there's always a way. I'm going to point now where I can finish it up, and any fine tuning can be done with a little bit of sanding. It just seems to want to bind a little bit after I get in a ways, and like I said, I can take care of that with a little cleanup. And I don't want to put a lot of pressure on this yet. It's still, the glue isn't completely dried, so I'm going to clamp this up now and let this piece dry up good and solid. The next thing to do is go in and dry fit this in the motorhome and then cut it to length, and then I can figure out where I want to attach it as far as height goes. All right, that ought to come in real handy. Well, hopefully you picked up a couple of tips. Thanks for taking the time to watch.